Welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm so glad that all of you are here. This is an special discipleship podcast that I know all of you out there listening in podcast land have been waiting for, the Discipleship Family Member Podcast. And we're going to talk about what that means here in a bit. But I want to introduce the crew here. I have none other than Ashley Elliot to my left, who is the women's director / instructional designer of Wells Branch Community Church. Welcome to the show.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
And also I have none other than Mrs. Catie Sas.
No titles for me. I don't have any titles.
She's Ava's mom.
Ava's mom.
Yeah. And how's it going with Ava?
Oh, let's not bring that up right now.
And then I also have Jacob Laldin, intern.
So
great to have you here, Jacob Laldin. Jacob, how's life back at the ranch with your sister? The house is still intact. You have done no designing, no upkeep, no nothing. You just let her take care of it.
Yeah, it's going really well. My dog is just so blessed to be there and to have someone who cleans up after the mud, the dirt, the hair. I mean, oh man, it's great.
All right, so Jacob's single. All right, so anyway, we're gonna move on. We're gonna be talking about what it means to be a family member, and specifically, we're talking about small group ministry, community group ministry, and what that looks like in the life of a church. So I have, what I'm really excited about is probably one of the best community groups on the planet. We have none other than, I'm getting a lot of nods from our live studio audience.
One nod.
Drum roll, please.
Yeah.
2 nods.
So Ashley, talk to me about what it means to be a family member, and how do we get to this? How do we arrive at this biblically?
Okay, so for context, we are community group shepherds. Mark and I are. And we've been doing this about 7 years. So I feel like it's a lot of trial and error, honestly. A lot of reflection, revisiting, feedback, trying to have that.
I think the one thing your group is famous for is like the group covenant.
Yes. So my sister and her husband, they talked about a covenant that they have at their small group. And so basically I just used that and added a little bit of scripture to it. And what we do is we function in semesters, because that's, what teachers do.
Yeah.
And so we have a spring semester, summer, and fall. And for each of those, we'll have like a little covenant that goes, we'll be confidential in what we say. We're committed to showing up. We're committed to growth. And we'll commit to coming for the next 20 weeks. And they sign that. And then afterwards, it's also an out. If you don't want to continue with our community group, that's a good, natural way to be like, I think I'm good. Or if you want to continue, it's a nice way to see who's committed again.
Okay. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah, and so, and also, it essentially, has that given you any hard conversations like, hey, you haven't been coming, and you signed this thing that said you'd come?
Oh yeah, we have, and in the covenant it says, if this is something you cannot make, we will try to find somewhere where you can. I think sometimes people think that we don't encourage you to leave our group and go somewhere else, but that's not the goal. The goal is for you to be in community. So if you can't make our group and you need to be somewhere else where you can and they can love on you there, then that's completely okay with us. We just want you to be in community.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people that are like they think they go every week kind of people, but they actually go once every other month.
Well, us having to, community shepherds take attendance. I don't know if you guys knew this. It's part of our church thing. So I actually have documentation. I'm like, do you need me to pull out the receipts? You were here once last year. So just kidding. I don't do that. But that is something that helps me, because sometimes it feels like, oh yeah, you were here. And then I have no actual recollection of when you were or weren't.
Yeah. How about for you, Catie? What about, talk to me about your group that you're in, and what it looks like to be a family member within that group.
So I'm in Annika Tyfke's women's group, and I love the shift in dynamic from the family setting to now I get to personally go and experience community in a more intimate female environment to where we're all moms. Well, 90% of us are moms. And so it's a welcoming place where we can all share burdens, we can share victories, we can share prayer requests, we can share praises. And I mean, yes, a lot of them do revolve around motherhood, but then a lot of them revolve around marriage and work or whatever it is. And so I get to have this time of peace where Ryan is home with Ava. We're not having to like juggle eating dinner early to all three of us get to community group and then
Right.
afterwards rush home to get her in bed and, you know, fight the traffic, fight the whole rush of what it used to feel like whenever all of us were in community group together. So I just have loved the like option for women's groups lately.
Yeah, that has, I think the arrival of more children has caused us to rethink community groups because it's been super challenging to be able to be with one another in a couples environment.
Yeah.
So that's sort of birthed men's groups, women's groups, which we now have a lot of.
Yeah.
As well as a lot of the mixed groups. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do y'all have childcare, Ashley?
We do.
Okay.
And I've learned over the years, you pay your child care people really well, and they'll come back.
Ah.
Yeah.
But I also make people, because, you know, we have 2 kids, and they're under 3, so it's nice to host because then we can put them to bed.
Yeah.
But we do confirm if people are bringing their child. So if I know, we have some single moms, we have people who had multiple children, and so I would text them the day of like, hey, if you don't think you're coming, it's not a big deal. Just let me know so that we don't just have childcare and pay for it when
Right.
it's not necessarily needed. So that's usually the only thing I ask of people to do.
Yeah.
We do have it, yeah.
When we had, I think we had 17 kids at one group.
Oh,
And so what we did is we went to a church that had an Awana service going on at the same time. And we dropped all the kids off there. And then we used one of the church's portables to do our community group, which worked out. It was a sweet gift of that church to us.
But
And
17 kids is a lot.
It's a lot. And we did that originally with a little teeny Baptist church. And we think we broke that church. And I felt really bad about it. Because
Brought 17 children every Sunday
I did
afternoon?
feel bad. Because, you know, when Adrian and we have an idea about because the childcare situation is never great. And because we have to get, it's a mess. Anyway, so yeah.
So now y'all both have your own
Yes,
men's
so
group and
women,
women's
Adrian
group.
has a women's group, I have a men's group, and so that really works for us. And for the very reasons, because the only night that would work for us as a couple with kids was Sunday nights, and that coming off preaching Sunday morning and then doing a Sunday night thing, which is really more like Sunday at around 5, and you were really trying to push to get home by 7, even then it was late.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a challenge. So
Do you think it's a season, like when your kids are older and more functional?
yeah, it's a season.
Yeah.
But it's a season for 10 years. You know, when you have 4 kids that are spread out. Right now, my oldest is 9 and my youngest is 3. So when my oldest is probably maybe 3 more years, I could probably leave him with all the kids. But even then, it's 4 boys, and are you going to come home with a house that's not a wreck and someone like with a broken arm? I don't know. That's a challenge that we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, but Jacob, you're in 3 different groups essentially, right?
Yeah, so I'm in 2 men's group, 3 men's groups, and
You're in 3 men's groups?
I am. I go to one at another church in the association, and then 2 at our church, and then I'm in a community group as well, but my attendance there is kind of spotty.
At least you admit it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you do regen at City View.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, so I do a regen at City View. I lead a regen here, and then I'm in the Mitchell CG, but man, I haven't been in a long time. And then I'm in the Tyfke's men's group. So just being like a single guy, I find myself, I'm able to like have a greater impact and kind of be fed more. In like
When you have more time to be able to invest
You
in
need
those.
and you need to not have idle time.
Idle, yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so I have like no idle time. That's why when I come home and my family's there and I'm just kind of standing there like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like, it's usually time for bed
can
by the
decorate
time
the
I get
walls.
home.
Yeah, decorate some
I should
walls.
decorate, yes.
Take pictures to have pictures to put on the wall.
Oh, that's nice. Smart.
Take pictures of my dog.
With your family.
No, with the
while they're there.
family. That's what they're.
Weirdo.
All right. So, let's get back to the primary question. Talk to me about the come as you are sort of mentality that you're asking people to bring, kind of a no masks kind of environment, Ashley, you're asking people to have.
Yeah, so I think, when you go home for the holidays and you go see your family, we all try to put on our best self, but at the end of the day, you know, Uncle Joe is Uncle Joe, and he's going to come how he wants to. And we don't judge based on that because you're family. And so I think that's something that we try to have a mentality of, too. Like, if you've had a rough day, this might be the best place for you to be because we love you as you are. We want to be there for you. We want to support you. And so we really do appreciate the no masks. Ironically, you know, COVID masks maybe take a different form. But no masks, no, let's not pretend. We can't minister to you if we don't know what's really going on. And I think the lovely thing about our group is they really come as they are, and that helps us minister and get closer together.
Yeah, I think everybody wants an environment that has no masks, but sometimes it can be challenging to get there, which is why I think the men's and women's sometimes makes it easier to facilitate that. Would you say, Catie?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
All right, so talk to me, though, about eating together, what that brings, because that's something our group does. Does your group do that? Eat together?
No, but
do,
I mean.
Do any of your groups eat together?
We do sometimes. Yeah, it just depends because sometimes we do.
Okay, and
These are
Ashley,
small
do you
groups.
guys eat together?
We always eat together.
So, like, is it like a potluck, or how do you guys do it?
We've done it differently over the years. Sometimes Mark and I would host, but there were times when we had 30 people on the roster in our group, and we would have 12 people show up. So preparing a lot of extra food didn't go well.
Right.
And then we have seasons where we'll do it once a month, and then we have a food rotation. So the people who sign the covenant, you're committing to being here, so we can count on you. And so we have a food rotation where, you know, because we plan in semesters, it gives you 4, 5, 6 weeks even to prepare ahead, and you coordinate with your people on your food rotation, and you bring a meal, whether that's pizza one week or, I mean, we're known for our Stouffer's lasagnas and chicken enchiladas, but we make it work. So
yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, for our group, we do a lot of hamburgers on the grill, and sometimes we'll get some guys to bring some ribeyes. Sometimes we'll get some better meats or chicken or jalapeno poppers, but it's a lot of that. Now we don't start till 8 o'clock for our group. It's wild. But yeah, that tradition started by, I don't know if you guys know Scott Lilly. He started bringing us like Mighty Fine burgers, like 15 or 20 of them.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, wow, this is like really nice. We're at next level. And he did that consistently, and all of a sudden people were like hungry. And I was like, why don't we just, hey, we're going to beer, beef, Bible, everyone bring your,
BYOB.
BYOB.
Yeah, and it really blew up quick, and like people really stepped up, and they just started showing up with cases of beer and pounds of meat. And
it was wild. And so that sort of also probably helped to the unmasking a little bit. But yeah, what I've found that with that is that the eating together aspect, we spend 30 minutes just eating together. How long do you guys just spend eating together?
We usually, probably 20 to 30 minutes. It depends on if the food gets there on time or if we're delayed in our cooking. But we usually spend 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll start. Sometimes they'll be eating while we start. We kind of just try to do it that way. But we find that a lot of the conversations about how are you doing, the checking in naturally happens when you're awkwardly sitting around eating. You want to have a conversation. So that's where a lot of our conversations happen.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens for us. It's kind of like we do it outside, which is convenient for my wife. And I have 3 fire pits that sit outside, and we usually gather around one fire pit to start, and then we'll break into smaller groups later. Okay, so Ashley, when you're a family member, you're there because you're family. Is it completely, talk to me about how intentional you have to be for God to make you a true family. Talk to me about that.
Well, in our theory, I guess we say community group doesn't meet once a week. We meet every day.
Okay.
Whether that's in person, it's usually not in person. It's usually a text message, a check-in, our text threads, our group me. Just if you're in the neighborhood stopping by. I mean, most of our community group we have an app where you can have a key to our house, and they literally have full access. It's like they're basically owners of the house at this point, where they can come in, they can leave things, they can do things. I mean, there have been times when we're running late and we're like, just go ahead and go in the house, and they function as if it's their home. Like that's kind of how we.
It's pretty great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you have like this is your house you treat them legitimately like family. Like you've got stockings of everybody in your community group on the wall and stuff.
We do. We put initialized stockings on our wall. That's kind of at first we really love the idea of it. Our family does it back home, and we're like, we should do that with all of our community group because they're family to us. And so this was the first year we actually put something in their stocking for them to open. So that's going to be a new tradition, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's exciting. I can't wait to see how this evolves as people have children, because that's going to be a challenge. But man, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Talk to me about like really like how you guys have come together beyond your typical like group.
What do you mean?
Like, has there been any like someone's hurt, someone's
Okay,
sick,
yeah.
someone
We've done a lot of life things together. I mean, we started out, our group was a lot of, well, this last couple years, our group was a lot of singles, and we've had a lot of marriages. We've had a lot of people buying cars and houses, and so we try to do all those things and celebrate all those wins together. But also, when someone's going through a rough time, we had someone in our group have a stroke, and
Oh,
we've
man.
been taking shifts to go to the hospital and make sure that we're there. We just want them to know that we are loved, and we love them, and that we're there for them no matter what. I mean, the guys went recently, like the guys usually have a guys' night where they all get together, and they recently went down there to visit and play games. They decorated his room with Christmas lights and pictures of our community group, and just that feel of family.
That's good. Now, how many people are in your community group?
On the roster, I think we have 25. We probably have about 18
Right.
consistently.
Yeah. So even though you make them sign the covenant, there's still about 7 that they're just not going to be there every week.
I am not a grace-giving person, but over time I have learned to do better.
Okay.
Mark is definitely grace-giving. So I think, obviously everybody has a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we have single moms. I give a little more grace to single moms. I mean, you're trying to do it all on your own. I don't know how you do it. I don't even know how to be a mom myself sometimes. So that, just communication, following up, asking that they tell us if they're not going to be there. I think communication goes a long way. Instead of just not showing up, that's when I give a little less grace. If you're just not showing up and you're not talking and you're not reaching out or responding when we reach out, that's a little different than if you're really going through something and we need to go minister to you.
Okay. So how do you tell somebody that's not in community, like how do you sell it? Catie, what do you think? How do you sell somebody like they're just became a Christian, new to the whole thing? How would you sell community, like from a, I don't know, discipleship standpoint, perhaps?
I'm a big emotionally driven person, and so I would probably lead with like the emotional benefit of being in community.
Okay, what is that?
Just the support, the friendship, the deepening of friendships, the creation of vulnerability, the realness within a good, deep community group. And that's kind of where I would, because all of us are designed for relationships, and we're built for community. And so there's already a longing to be known. So that's kind of where I would start with, is like, we all want to be known and loved, and this is where you can experience that.
Okay, it's a place to be. And I don't want to say that's, I think everybody needs a place to be. But for women, the emotional mixing is a huge...
Yeah, I mean, that's where you can start.
And what I've seen for men, the emotional connection is actually a big deal as well. But men also probably need people to do stuff with.
Yeah.
How have you seen men do stuff in your community group, Ashley?
Well, they like to get together and they go to some place where they have a bunch of board games and they play board games. They'll go to the shooting range, the gun range, which a lot of the girls are like, we want to do things like that. So we're trying to do a lot of co-ed group things together. They will cook. They do a lot of game nights.
And they go to Vegas a lot.
They do go to Vegas without me, yes. They take a lot of trips together. I mean, we literally plan our trips around when they're off, when they can take off. Mark has a competition in April, and all of our community group, for the most part, is invited. I mean, it's an open invitation, so guys, girls, regardless.
Awesome.
If you can find your way and you can find a place to stay, then you're welcome to come join us. So
that's going to be super fun.
yeah,
Wow.
it is pretty fun.
That is wild. I mean, okay.
I think that's great. Like, we're all wired and designed to be a part of a family, to want family, whether we want to admit it or not. And I know I grew up in a great family, but I didn't really find my real family until I got here to church, and I started getting involved and plugging in, and I had people to eat with, to do things with, and be vulnerable with, because those people can be tough to find.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about what happens in a community group. One of the things that we've found, at least in my group, and you've been in my group, you've been in probably everybody's group, is we found confession and repentance of sin a big aspect of that. Have you seen that in groups beyond mine? Is that something that's taken seriously?
Yeah, it's taken very seriously, especially in I would imagine in the like a women's only groups and in the men's groups, because we grow in that, and we, when we're convicted of all of our nastiness and our sin, like we want to do something about it. We don't really know how. We just got to take our problems to another man, and by God's grace, those leaders in there, they've been walked through what it looks like to confess and to repent. Robert, he actually just walked in. He's one of my accountability partners. And so that's something that we practice regularly. And it makes a huge difference. Like, it takes away the shame and the guilt that Satan just wants to speak into our ears.
Yeah.
And lets us walk forward and actually walk through the problems that we're dealing with, and not just avoid them and stuff it down.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you have relational equity, you have that overlap. You're in the same circles. You see each other on natural touch points throughout the week. That it does make it easier to have those harder conversations once you have that, instead of just being like, okay, what do you struggle with? What's your sin? Versus,
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, how are you doing? I heard things are going rough, or how's work this past week? That kind of thing.
So let's talk about why people dread community group. What are the things that happen in a community group that is not life-giving? Can you think of some of those things, and how do you know because I think for a lot of people that they're in a community group and they're not loving it. They're at a place where they're struggling because people have masks on, right? I think that might be one of the way to put it. It's just like, I come up, I show up, we talk about Bible things, and we leave it surface level, and everybody goes home. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with going deeper and relationally.
Well, not everyone wants to be known, and that is hard. Not everyone wants to be vulnerable and be seen, because then once they're known and they're seen, then they might be
rejected,
and they might be pushed to grow.
Right.
Uncomfortably.
Yeah.
Or change.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what happens...
Their sin would be seen,
Yeah.
and they don't want to grow out of their sin.
And I think if you're in a community group where authenticity is not being modeled, it's going to be very hard for that to be throughout the group. And so you'll really struggle. And that's usually why groups over time don't grow, is because there is a lack of authenticity within the community group shepherds leading the group. So how, Ashley, how do you as a community group shepherd, how do you model authenticity in a way that is sort of like, it allows people to kind of be real, be right where they're at, confess sin, share struggle, and there's two components to this. One, you got a mixed group of men and women, but then also, how do you keep it real in a mixed setting, and then deeper when you guys go single sex, probably break-offs?
In a mixed group setting, I think it's more of a general vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get into very specifics. We save that for guys and girl time, because
Yeah.
I think that's the more appropriate time for it.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that we do break into guys and girls almost every time, unless we run super late when we're all together. And then we also have every other week is guys, girls nights. So we try to build in that time for fellowship and
Nice.
confession to be there.
Nice.
I think that's helped a lot. But I think just being vulnerable with, I'm a type A personality. I'm a perfectionist. I like to look like I have it all together. I like the home to be ready for being hosted. But there are a lot of times, parenthood has really shown me that I don't have it all together. And being able to be vulnerable with, like, when I ask for, because we text out sometimes, like, highs, lows, prayer requests, what are you reading? What are you struggling with? What are confessions? And I say mine. I recently have been struggling with an idol of ease. I just don't want to have to struggle with certain things. Or really realizing that I'm tired and I can't do it. And so reaching out to my community group has been a lot. I mean, I also have really good, blunt people in our community group that'll be like, what do you need help with? What can I help you with?
Nice.
And they will ask. Those questions are important, I
Nice.
think, to ask the shepherds too.
Yeah.
But they took over. I mean, one time I was really struggling with both kids. Mark was gone for a competition, and they literally scheduled, I think they scheduled a time for us to be together and go out for the weekend to a hotel, and they took over in shifts the kids. They took them to birthday parties, they took them to church, and they just literally stepped up in a way that family would.
That's huge.
I remember that. I remember seeing that, and I was like, that is like the most beautiful thing ever.
Yeah.
So
So
cool.
who's taking Ava?
We are very lucky to have family here. So
Yeah, that is a huge blessing. Okay, so let's talk about what are some things that sort of like go against building community?
Not showing up.
Not showing up, isolation definitely doesn't work. And why do people do it?
laziness.
Is it laziness?
I think it's a cry for help sometimes. I think you're isolating yourself because you want to be known, but you don't know how to engage in that moment. I mean, you know, this time of year, there's a lot of depression and anxiety, and I think sometimes it's just exhausting. Or if you're introverted, sometimes you just need to recharge. But how do you do that, and how you communicate that, and who loves you through that is important.
Yeah, I think sometimes like you want to show up and you just want to cry, and you're like, well, that would be weird, and they might judge me. And so I think it's like a fear of man. Like we're all craving it deep down, like a craving of people and attention and a community. But it's scary to put yourself out there.
Well, also, you know, it's not exact. Like, there's a lot of men who would be like anti, like, I just want to sit around and share my feelings and talk about how sorry we all are.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place where men also need to be able to be men and to kind of be how men are. And I think, but you can't be real like that without the intimacy. And I think why men criticize that is they feel like it's forced. And so I don't have real relationship with you, and I only am close to a couple people, which is why, you know, showing up for the very first time and just bearing your soul can feel really odd.
Our guys actually meet longer than our girls. I mean, they're out there. They meet outside. They meet outside for multiple minutes, and we usually end up waiting on them because once they start rolling, once you start being that vulnerable, I think it just is easier.
It opens the door for everyone else.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I think that it can kind of like that sort of intimacy can kind of be a scary thing for a lot of people. What other things are barriers? So isolation, I think isolation is one, but also being busy. And being busy with good stuff that's not great stuff. And you have to value and prioritize community over good things. And I think this is probably the biggest struggle for most Americans is this, I don't think Americans are really struggling with like, I don't have anything to do. And so figuring out with all of the different activities that are going on throughout the week, how to have community, that becomes super challenging. So how do you... What would be an argument for like, it's be intentional, choosing, because I already went to church on Sunday. I even was served in the children's ministry on Sunday, and now you're wanting another hour, 2-3 hours. When you don't want another night of my week, that's too much. What do we say to people that are just like, I can't give all that time?
I think busyness is relative. Everyone is busy. If you ask them if they have time for things, they don't. I mean, you can fill your time and space with anything that you want to fill it with. And there are good commitments and there are commitments that you probably shouldn't be filling it with. But I do think at the end of the day, you make time for what you want to make time for. That's literally what we say. And I think that if you make time for community, it will produce a blessing. I think if you've never really experienced community, then you don't necessarily want to make time for it sometimes. But I think if you actually have experienced community, it should be life-giving. It should not be sucking the life out of you to go to another commitment.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where maybe you need to sit in prayer a little bit more
Right.
and figure out what's happening.
It should be worth the potential exhaustion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I think it's like a twofold thing. One, it's like a convincing people that like this is a beneficial to you, and then two, once they're convinced, it's getting them to just make that a commitment. And so what that might look like is, you know, leaving work early, saying no to your old time friend who just came in to town and invites you to a baseball game. Instead, be like, hey, why don't you come with me to my community group? And so it's really making it a priority, because you're not going to get anything out of it unless you really invest into it, and you're not going to experience the vulnerability and having those like family members who just like show up on your front door and they're like, hey, we got you and your husband a hotel room, go do that. Like, you don't find that by showing up once a month or once every a few months. Like,
When
it
I
takes
think
effort.
As a shepherd, coming at it from a shepherd perspective too, trying to be, okay, what do I need to do to make you feel ready to come? What do I need? How can we love you so that this is not a barrier? And really listening to what it is, because sometimes people don't even know what the barrier actually is. It
Right.
just, they haven't sat with it enough to really process it.
Right.
I like what you said earlier, Ashley. Like, whenever people have had a long day at work, it's so much easier for them to just be like, you know what, I just need to go home and turn my brain off. I just need to relax at home by myself. When really, like, community group is the place that you should actually be. And so we have this like false perception of like, oh, I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired from work, I just feel frustrated or whatever it is. And so then the thought of going to another thing where there are people where you have to talk more and be more engaged and on, it feels exhausting. Like, it feels like, oh, I don't want to do it. It's just too much work. But like, the reality of it is, it's a false perception, because
Well, and I've had people message me and say, I'm feeling off today. I'll be there, but don't expect me to talk.
Yes.
And that's good. That's a good thing,
Yeah.
so that we can love them well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it gets really exhausting if I have to come from a long day of work and show up and put on a mask. And that's not what anyone is asking us to do. They're asking us to show up and be ourselves, talk about the bad day that we've had.
Just say, hey, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
I don't like want to be here, but I know it's good for me. Like, that is the best place for you to be, around people that love you and want to know you after you've had a long, crappy day at work.
Right.
Yeah, and then you get to decompress with your family instead of all by yourself, where you're kind of sulking and like stirring in your own thoughts.
But yeah, okay. So this has all been super helpful. Want to talk through really the different sort of what we should know, how things we should be feeling, and the things we should be doing. One of the things I've just sort of noticed that with a lot of us is that are we called to be known by and belong to a local body of believers? And I think a lot of people would say, oh yeah, that's the church. Right, but if you're just showing up to a Sunday morning gathering and there's over 200 people there, that's going to be very difficult to be known, which is why it's so important to be known specifically by a shepherding influence. So what do you guys think about that? Just the reality of like being known by a shepherd, someone to be submitted to, and someone to belong to in a local context of a smaller group of people.
Well, it's hard for the leaders in our church who are shepherding over us to kind of know who they're pouring into, who they're looking out for, if they don't know who their flock is. And you got to show up and be a part of a of a flock.
Well, and I think
for
it's
them
not
to
realistic to have that, Chris is great, and he
Right.
would be as intentional as he can be, but he cannot fully know every single person in our church. There has to be a structure for more of a check-in type of thing for him to check in with the shepherds and know that they're taking care of their flock.
Right. Yeah, and that's really kind of the point, is like just the structural reality of like in a church of our size, you can't have intimacy or people really knowing you well enough to call you out on sin, to call you out on the darkness, if there isn't a place for that place to be known. So I think that's super valuable. How about this? But there's also a place where you have to overcome your own pride of your own, I want to do what I want to do with my own time. And anytime I'm obligated to anybody else, it is a burden to me, and I resist that. And I think that's the part of your time is one of your greatest commodities, and that's why it's essential that we give it away to those who are called to love and serve. Any thoughts on that, Catie?
No, I thought that was well said.
All right. All right. So yeah, essentially one of the things we want everyone here to be involved in community. I don't know if you guys know this. We have 24 community groups at our church, which is sort of wild. So yeah, I would love for you to be part of a community group. So if you're not and you're in Austin and you want to get connected, or at least in the greater Austin area, we would love to connect you to one of our community groups. Or if you want to know more about community, you can text in at 737-231-0605. We would love to answer all your questions on community and what it is to be a family member where you are known and you have brothers and sisters in Christ who love you and challenge you and support you. So from our house to yours, we just want to thank everyone here for your time. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
No.
Have an awesome week of worship.